Welcome back to the Positively Jacked podcast, where we dish real-time strategies on nutrition, fitness, wellness, and lifestyle trends to prioritize positive psychological habits and best practices. Goals for each episode: relay helpful information topics relating to health, mental and physical, nutrition, lifestyle, and habit formation. In addition, we give real-time strategy, or RTS, that anyone can apply in the same day to help benefit themselves.
Well, and if I want to tease today, we're basically going to take the world's worst internet advice, throw it in a blender, and serve you something that hopefully you can actually use.
What a concept. Before we dive in, quick housekeeping notes, just so you know what to expect. First, if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe button so you never miss out on our latest episode. We drop new content every week, packed with real-world advice on health, fitness, nutrition, and more.
We also love hearing from you. If you've got a question or topic that you want us to break down in future episodes, just slide into our DMs, leave a review. We're all about engagement. We love hearing from you, and we want to make sure we're answering the topics and questions that matter most to you.
And lastly, if you're enjoying the show, we appreciate it if you could take a minute to leave us a review. We do this for passion. It helps us get the word out so more people can benefit from what we're doing. Plus, if you leave a review, we might just shout you out in the next episode because we're cool like that. And we like to, words of appreciation. That's some of our love language we like to express.
Keep your friends closer and your other friends closer than that.
Yay. All right. Housekeeping out of the way. Let's talk about today's episode.
Yeah, if you've ever heard this phrase, sugar is toxic, and thought that like eating after 8 p.m. is a fast track to fat gain, this episode's for you. We're diving deep into the fitness and nutrition myths that we feel like people get stuck in. They hear it one time and it's like lore to them, and you never forget it.
Yeah, it's very baity. It's very it sounds profound and shocking enough to almost seem true. And that's the beauty behind it. It kind of grips you. And then for the longest time, you think that sugar is poison and that you can't eat after 6 o'clock at night and stuff like that. And we're here to unpack that a little bit, take some of the villainy out of these things and just show you what it actually can be like for you if you want to apply it.
Yep. We like good urban lore, and this feels kind of like urban lore.
Yeah. So today's got a little bit of structure to it because some of the topics do include a decent amount of science, but also some of our own experience when it comes to coaching or with ourselves. So here's how we structured today's episode. We're going to go about 4 to 5 biggest myths that you've heard probably when it comes to food, fitness, hydration. We'll kind of break down the science behind it and why it's not really true what the myth is. Then after that, we're going to go into a coach's corner takeaway. At the end of each episode, we like to give you a little bit of practical piece of advice that you can apply right now to help you move forward with those goals. And then if we have some, we'll have some listener Q&A, wrapping things up with anything that people might have submitted, social myth submissions, and we love hearing from you. So keep those things coming in.
Yep. So we'll be covering a lot, but don't worry, we're keeping things actionable. So hopefully that you can put it right to work and keep doing what matters most, getting results.
All right. First one. Very popular.
This was like one of the first ones I think anybody hears as a coach, or maybe they heard it from a coach themselves. Sugar is toxic, and it's as addictive as cocaine.
Right. So the claim is cut it out completely. It's addictive. It's terrible for you. It messes with your brain chemistry, all that stuff.
Yep. So there's a lot of fear-based messaging around this, around sugar, from media to influencers to even like CrossFit HQ, pushing extreme elimination diets. The comparison to cocaine makes it like super dramatic. And honestly, it sticks because we love the idea of having like a clear enemy, one single source of truth. So what is the truth to this one?
The reality is that sugar, like all foods, has context. Overconsumption of sugar can definitely lead to health issues like obesity, diabetes, inflammation, but that doesn't mean it's toxic or inherently addictive in the same way that hard drugs are. If you really think about it, all carbs are sugar. So when you say I'm sugar-free, are you carb-free as well? No, I'm not. Hang on, say that. Fiber doesn't necessarily count. but they all do break down monosaccharides, polysaccharides. They're essential. They're needed. They're found in nature. You can find sugar in nature. So these things are not things that you necessarily have to completely gut and remove, nor do you have to think that they're like a drug. That's always an interesting one to me. But it can release, we'll go to the science portion of this. It can release dopamine in the brain, your reward system, but it doesn't meet the criteria for quote unquote addiction. So studies show that consumption doesn't create a compulsive behavior seen with substances like alcohol, narcotics. And that's not just from us, that's from Neuroscience and Behavioral Reviews, 2017. We can include that in the show notes. But essentially, the claim that it is addictive like drugs is unfounded, right? You definitely can have certain things affect you with high doses of sugar, but that's just high sugar. Your body's balancing it out. Sugar is very quickly available, it burned off, and there's a biochemical reaction that doesn't necessarily mean addiction.
Yeah. So I think you had a really good example when we were kind of planning the episode around, now from the athlete standpoint, you're training for a marathon. Yeah.
And so in a given day, mind you, my approach is not for everybody, but I am 6'2", 220 pounds, probably anywhere between 10 and 15% body fat. I haven't checked in a long time, but that's usually where I sit at when I'm paying attention to nutrition. And on a given day, normal training day, I have to consume over 400 grams of carbs because my training volume is high, my training age and athletic experience is high. So my metabolism's pretty efficient. Now, having said that, if I go on a run or if I have a long training session, it is almost impossible to get the level of carbohydrate I need when I need it to most optimize performance and recovery without sugar. So I won't use my long run days because those are just an anomaly in themselves because I have to consume so many calories. But even on a short run day, right, where it's between 3 and 7 miles of tempo, I'll probably take in anywhere from low end 60 to 80, high end 150 grams of sugar on that day out of 400 plus. So that seems like a lot, and it kind of is, but also I am taxing my body's local glycogen stores. I'm taxing my body's sugar storage, right? Glycogen is carb, it is sugar. That is our preferred means, especially if we train consistently, of energy production and energy recovery. And so if I'm sapping that in a training session and then I go eat nothing but heavy sweet potatoes, I'm not breaking that down as quickly as I need to, as efficiently as I need to. That takes a lot of energy. And sugar is where that comes in. Sugar doesn't take a lot of energy to break down. It actually just goes right in. You burn it pretty quickly. It's simple and it's off to the races in your bloodstream. And there are things that you got to pay attention to, obviously, if you are diabetic, right? You've got to control that load. Or if you do have an insulin sensitive or hyperinsulinemia or insulin sensitivity to that stuff, yeah, you have to manage it more. But in general, if you're training, sugar or a form of sugar is kind of essential to it if you're stacking on good weight and good volume.
So would you say, let's say somebody's just average, working an average desk job, training a couple times a week, just your average human, sugar still plays a role for them too?
Absolutely. You can remove it to an extent, but to think that you would be able to train, how often do most people we know train 3 to 5 days a week?
Yep.
Right. Some strength, some endurance. To think that you can go through that and not in any way, shape, or form benefit from having a faster absorbing carbohydrate readily available within your framing window around your training session is silly. That's when you are sugar sensitive. That's when you've depleted your stores. So a person's body is just primed for that in and around training.
Okay. So there's always a little truth to something. So what is the truth to the myth, maybe?
Large quantities of refined sugar can overload metabolic pathways. It can go with more of it being not necessarily addictive, but it can be toxic, right? So the dose makes the poison. And so if you're somebody who is deconditioned, if you're somebody who just consumes over consumes processed sugar sources all the time, then yeah, that's a problem. If you're drinking soda, eating candy, table sugar in your coffee, all that stuff round the clock, then yeah, that's a big dysregulation. That's a definitely, I would say, a toxic dose. Whereas if you're an athlete training and you've got 3 to 5 square meals a day with whole food sources of, sweet potatoes, yams, all that stuff, oats, and then in and around your training session, you decide to, I'll go back to weightlifting days, have some Sour Patch Kids, because one fun size bag or regular size bag of Sour Patch Kids is 50 grams of sugar. That's okay. That's a very small amount of sugar in your overall nutrition profile and your overall carbohydrate amounts. So yeah, if you're chronically eating refined sugar from multiple sources, then you run into some problem areas.
Awesome. So keep some sugar in.
Yep.
Don't overdo it. Enjoy Sour Patch Kids and your fruit.
Yeah, and extremes are what hurt. Extremes both in the negative side and in the positive side. So try to find that middle ground.
Too much water is a bad thing.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into that one here in a minute. We'll get into that one. Not this early. That's number like 4 or 5. We're on number 2.
Yeah, the next one I really want to cover is the old eating late at night. Eating after 8 turns to fat.
This one cracks me up because in our nutrition challenge, we did have probably one of the funniest statements from one of our participants. And the quote was, "I thought it was perimenopause. You're telling me it might just be the meat sweats at night."
I will never forget that.
And I will never forget that either. It was brilliant. It was hilarious, but also it kind of ties into this eating late at night. So the claim is that eating after 8 p.m. automatically turns to fat.
Yep. I'll even go 6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m. It's like eating after a certain time frame and why it sticks, right? Why does that stick?
It's an easy win. Right? It seems like something easy to do to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop eating. Just stop eating late at night. And I mean, I'll fully admit, I fell for this one hard because it was so easy and because it's like, that's one simple thing I can do. I don't have to overthink it. But we have a lot of people who work professional jobs and end up eating late all the time. So I want to get into the balance here of what we're looking at for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because here's the thing. The claim, as I want to refresh it, just eating after 8 p.m. turns to fat. The claim is what's absurd. Can eating late have an effect? Absolutely. But those are 2 very different conversations. So the truth is that the time you eat isn't what is causing fat gain. Okay, it's all about the caloric load, intake over the course of the day. It doesn't automatically lead to weight gain at a certain point at night unless you've exceeded your caloric goal for the day, right? So that side, but also part of this, there was shown between intermittent fasting, right, where you have a calorie restricted window, right, usually like anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, and just calorie restriction as a whole. Both had the equivalent benefits of just calorie restricted eating. So it wasn't necessarily the time frame, it was the overall message of calorie restriction based on activity and based on what you were trying to do. So they're very well, if we go a little bit more into other science about that, timing of food intake doesn't directly influence fat loss unless you're operating on a massive caloric surplus. 2016 study in obesity reviews found that the composition of the diet, not the timing, has the biggest impact on weight regulation. So I want to say that again. Yeah. Composition, not necessarily the timing. So
I think, you know what I think kind of gave this some legs too is that let's face it, when we're talking about people who sometimes eat in who end up eating in a calorie surplus, right? Mm-hmm. What do we usually eat after the meal at night? What happens?
That's snack time.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the way that this found ground is that for a lot of people, that's the oops, it fell in my lap meal. That's the
Right.
oops, I went to the fridge and I couldn't just walk by,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always dessert because you've already had the meal.
Yep. Or some type of snackable that, like, when you're, chilling out to Netflix.
Right before you go to bed. Yep. You feel
Yep.
like you want something to watch TV to elevate the occasion of just that time between dinner and bed.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that a lot.
Yeah. And it's an easy default because, sometimes it's tactile. Sometimes people like being able to just sit there and like slowly put away an entire bag of movie theater butter popcorn while they're watching 3 to 4 episodes on, Peacock or Netflix. And before you know it, that becomes a habit 5 days a week. And that's a whole lot of extra calories late at night after you probably have taken in your food for the day. And everybody thinks it's because it's late at night. No, you could probably get away with eating popcorn at another part of the day. But if it's not in your caloric window of what you're trying to do, it's excess. And at the end of the day,
that's an important part to call out too, because what we see a lot too, and I am guilty of this, is I hoard calories.
Yeah.
And then I end the day crashing out, basically.
I think that's a response a lot of people who have gone too far into the macro counting side of things is that they anticipate the need for more of their macros later in the day or more of their calories later in the day. And then they realize, like, oh, wow, I actually ate only 50% of my calories and it's 6 p.m. right now. And I need to get 1,200 more calories in the day.
Yep. Or it's if you're an insurance minded person, you always think you might need more. And you basically save it because you kind of want to end the day feeling like you have room to grow.
Right. Full, happy, fat, satisfied, all that stuff. But it doesn't take, the myth of 8 p.m. or after that'll add straight to fat to fear you, like put the fear into you to not do that. I eat a lot of calories in a day. I front load the heck out of those calories. And sometimes I will get to 7 p.m. and still need 500 calories to end the day. And that's hard to do. But realistically, I'm still fairly lean. I'm very active. I'm actually less active now than I was, 10 years ago, probably. And I'm still holding a good body fat. I've still got good blood work, all that stuff. So the timing of it really doesn't, there's an element of comfort, digestion, auto regulation, all that goes into it. But inherently, it doesn't mean that you're just going to gain fat by eating a little bit later at night.
No. And we've worked with enough shift adjacent workers and doctors and nurses to know that is bunk.
Yeah, absolutely. I've some people who do, that third person shift, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. in healthcare or in anything else. And they're some of the fittest people we know because they are the most disciplined around their day because they know their schedule is different. And that discipline, that structure, those boundaries that they set for themselves are what benefit them. But if they were to just do whatever to make it happen, then you fall into a lot of possibly bad practices and habits and things that add up. But it's not inherently just the miscued timing. Our bodies are very adaptable.
Yeah. So coach's take on this is that late night eating isn't making you fat or isn't going to make you fat. It's what you're eating and whether or not it pushes you into a surplus. And those are the habits and behaviors that, if they're a pattern for you, we need to focus on adjusting meal timing and how you're appropriating during the day to ensure your earlier meals are like adequately filling and that we're not ending the day in a crash out.
Yeah. And also just remember, like we've talked about this before in podcasts, like after dinner, what's one of the things we recommend? Taking a walk because it smooths out digestion. But if you're eating at 8 o'clock at night and you're just sitting on the couch and you polish off, 500 calories and then you go to bed, I'm not saying that's going to add fat. It ain't going to make your sleep comfy because you're going to bed with
and that's like the biggest thing.
Trying to do stuff and you don't have, so it's one of those ones like, I understand why it could be an easy villain to try to exclude to that, but there's a lot more
There's
going
not
on.
there's not a single line. There's not a single
not at
line
all.
going from food to it just turns to fat because, the pumpkin is gonna turn back into a
Right.
or no, the carriage is gonna turn back into a pumpkin.
Yeah. Your stomach doesn't just
got my analogy background.
I love that though. That's a perfect timing. Your stomach does not turn into a fat making machine at 8 p.m. It just doesn't work that way.
Just flips over, turns into a gremlin.
Next one, fruit has
Yep.
too much sugar.
Oh, my bananas are back, friends.
Yeah. Fruit is full of sugar. You should avoid it if you're trying to lose weight.
Yep. And it's the return of the sugar is evil narrative. And it's because it's a singular enemy and it's a strong one. And it becomes all encompassing, even for something as nutrient packed as fruit. So
Yeah.
we've really grown accustomed to the idea that sugar is bad, but fail to see the bigger picture, I think, when it's packaged in natural foods.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's something to consider here is fruit, while it contains natural sugars, both fructose and glucose, depending on the fruit, depending on all that stuff. Think of the colors that you get. Think of the different textures, right? That's fiber, that's water, that's phytonutrients, that's all things that are packaged together to be eaten. That's why quite a bit of varying fruits do not have such a dramatic effect on blood sugar, are fantastic to have, in immune support, antioxidant support, all that stuff, and amazing to have for digestion. So if you remove all of that, where are you going to get those benefits? And I swear, if you say supplements, we're going to have a problem. Because why would you supplement a multivitamin and not eat fruit? It makes very little sense if you think about it. You didn't have multivitamins as of a certain duration ago. People ate fruit and they did just fine. Going into the science without going on too much of a tangent, whole fruit consumption is linked to reduced risk of chronic disease and improved body weight regulations. British Medical Journal, 2013. High fiber content in fruit slows sugar absorption and promotes satiety. So by eating fruit, not only are you getting healthy natural versions of sugar, but you're also pairing it with fiber and things that keep your blood sugar level, keep your digestion going smoothly. And those are two things that we need, not just from a weight loss standpoint, but a health and regulation of system standpoint.
You have sounded like a fruit evangelical preacher this whole segment. I love it. The way you went into ASMR whisper voice and then came out of it for the science was like chef's kiss just now.
I gotta draw you in and then pull you back, and then it's a symphony. But
I mean, to be fair, we are not advocating the fruitarian diet by any means. Again, anything out of balance is never going to be in our wheelhouse. But
right, but also, we've known people who've equated fruit to candy.
Oh, I'm pointing the finger at myself.
Yeah.
Because we've covered that in a previous episode that I thought bananas were like the Snickers of fruit, because my first nutrition coach literally pounded that into our heads.
Yeah. They were wrong.
Exceptionally wrong.
Oh, and it's, again, we'll kind of bump into the coach's take here, but fruit is not the enemy, right? It's a whole food packed with benefits. If you're worried about sugar intake, focus on added sugars from other sources. It doesn't make sense to make a villain out of fruit, considering all of the benefits that come with it. I mean, realistically, just going across, you might have heard the term eat the rainbow of colors. How are you going to do that without fruit?
Starbursts don't count, friends.
Starbursts don't count. Eat the rainbow doesn't count. Skittles doesn't count, right? Skittles is not the rainbow. I'm talking, find some red stuff. That's raspberries. What's the oranges? Come on. It's pretty simple. And I'm going to do a real quick caveat here, because I know some people have talked to me about this. Fruit juice is not fruit.
No.
Fruit juice is not fruit. So if you juice a bunch of stuff and you're like, look, I'm getting my fruit, you are getting possibly the phytonutrients and the sugars, but you're not getting the fiber. Like you're not getting the one thing that is meant to cushion the blow on your blood sugar.
Yep.
So yeah, fruit is not an enemy. As anything, it requires a little bit of tact, a little bit of structure to it. But, I haven't met anybody who got absurdly unhealthy because they ate too many mixed berries. Like
you're gonna get full before you get to that point. And that's the point. It's got the fiber. It's got just so much packed into it that like you're gonna be full and tired of watermelon before it's ever gonna be a problem.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting one. That's always a fun one.
I know. We get it every year, especially around fruit season.
Yeah, and I probably can count on two hands the amount of times somebody would say they would rather, or they've preferred to focus on eating something supplemental like a bar or a shake or something like that, rather than just take a banana with them. Yeah. And that's crazy to me. Like, there's certain things for supplements, and we can go into that stuff, but like, if you really want to just, I'm going to need 30 grams of carbs after this workout, take a banana.
Yeah. Okay. I think the reason it happens now is because, we shift around messages so much, and the messages, at least in the past couple of years, I feel like have been focused so much on protein. I mean, we're throwing added protein in everything. And so I think people choose, and I'm guilty of this too, like I choose bars sometimes because it's like, oh shoot, I got to hit X amount of protein by the end of the day. Like this banana is not going to get me there, but this one bar will.
Well, so I guess the distinction there I would make is that the avoidance behavior around the fruit and defaulting to something that seemingly fills the blank, as opposed to understanding your calorie breakdown, your macronutrients, your timing, and supplementing something else. Because I'll, if I'm low on protein, I'll have a protein shake, chocolate peanut butter, and then a banana, and then I have basically a chocolate peanut butter smoothie. But I have to chew the banana. So, all right. Outside of fruit, outside of sugar, and eating late at night, now we're finally to the one we kind of hinted at earlier, water.
Okay. The claim that drinking a gallon of water a day will melt fat. God, I just felt nauseous saying it too.
I know. And I honestly, the claim in general that you should drink a gallon of water a day, if it stopped there, it would have as equal of nails on a chalkboard sound to me.
Yeah. I don't even know. I don't even know where to go with that one. And I see it all the time. People, and it's funny because you and I both went to Europe last year. People don't carry around jugs of water the way they do here.
No.
And every time I go to Lifetime, somebody is literally carrying a hydro jug, a full gallon plastic thing of water. I mean,
you know what I will say though that they do in Europe that we don't do as much here?
What?
Eat fruits and veggies that have water in it.
Yep, that's true.
I mean,
it's true. We like the urban legends. We like the lore here.
We do. Yeah. But just to clarify though, hydration is a good thing. In fact, it is one of the lowest hanging fruit, quote, but it is one of the lowest hanging fruit that we would suggest to people as far as improving performance and optimizing for possibly body composition changes, because your body is composed mostly of water. So yes, water is essential. And it's one of those things where if you go into a state of dehydration, or you're not drinking actual water and you're just having liquids that have a lot of other stuff in it, that's going to affect a lot of systems, because every system you have depends on staying hydrated.
Yep. I think that's why it sticks.
Right, exactly. But with that caveat, you can absolutely drink too much water. And that's why I don't like the gallon recommendation, because realistically, very few people or training styles require you to drink a gallon of water a day.
Yeah.
And so here's the truth. The water is essential, no doubt. But optimizing hydration has way more of an effect than just pounding and a crazy amount of water. And so metabolic rate gets improved by hydration about 24 to 30% for 30 to 40 minutes after drinking. Okay, so that's from Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism. That effect is minimal, and you're looking at maybe 100 extra calories burned over the course of a day by that standard. In addition, hydration supports optimal function from everything muscle contractions to digestion. Drinking a gallon of water won't directly cause fat loss, and that's because just because your systems are running efficiently doesn't necessarily inherently go straight to fat loss, right? It's that combination.
Does it melt it?
Balance, yeah.
It's the word melt. I just can't.
I know that. Yeah, I don't understand.
It doesn't melt fat. It's not a magic elixir.
I mean, it is in that if you stay on top of it as a human being, you're going to do a lot of things better. It helps, nerve function. It helps pain. It helps all sorts of stuff. But it doesn't just burn off fat. Like, it just doesn't work that way. One thing I will say, and this is not to scare people, but this is a reality of it. The gallon of water a day recommendation, if you do that on a consistent basis and you're not designed to process that much water, you can do something called hyponatremia, or go into being hyponatremic, which essentially means that you drink so much water that you flushed essential salts and minerals out. And that can have implications on cramping, muscle function, but also kidneys.
Oh, yeah.
It is a balance of salts and hydration, because if you're just pounding water, and it's what's hilarious about this is the next thing we're going to talk about is salt intake. So you have so many people thinking salt is bad for you, at the same time drinking a gallon of water. So you're not taking in the thing that's supposed to help you retain water and keep it into the bloodstream and all that stuff. And you're over consuming the thing that needs to go out to your extremities, but doesn't get to without the assist of water or of salt. So it's really two very conflicting myths that really can hurt you in the long run.
Yep. You like that I put those next to each other, don't you?
I do. Jess prepped our show notes today, and it's freaking awesome. It makes it so much easier. So long story short, drink water. And by water, I mean water, not soda water, not water with Mio necessarily always in it, not all that stuff, but like drink real water. And our general recommendation is half your body weight in ounces of water a day.
Yep.
That's a good place to start. If that's too much, go roughly 3/4 of that. But try to do that before you just grab a gallon and start walking it around.
Or forcing it. I think that's, somebody who's had a kid whose bladder may be compromised from that. Like, I just can't imagine what my day would look like if I was literally trying to force gulp a gallon of water into my system. I just can't.
There are days where I can definitely drink a lot of water, and there's definitely times like
for sure,
long run where you can chug a lot, but it's one of those things. I know this is, I don't think this will take us to an explicit rating necessarily, but if you're really curious about staying on top of your hydration, pay attention to your pee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the more yellow or dark you have, then you're dehydrated. You need more water. If it's completely clear and it only runs clear, get some salts into your diet, right?
Yep.
Because that means that you probably don't have a lot coming out with it. It's just hydration. And there you go. There's your balance effect. Don't go completely clear for too long. Definitely don't go to where it's dark or very distinguished in color.
Yep.
And now
that was like that was like the first thing you taught me, like back at Big Bear, is look at your pee.
Yeah, we had hydration gauges on the toilets.
Yeah, we did. I remember that now. It was literally like a little thing on the side of the wall. Yep.
Just a little laminated.
Putting out the nostalgia of that minute.
It was laminated. Don't worry, it got cleaned. It wasn't just this piece of paper carrying backsplash.
Oh well, I mean, you act like that place was super clean. We left hamburger buns in there for 5 months.
What was in there?
Hamburger buns that were literally a fossil when we moved out.
Oh yeah, I know.
I was like, somebody's gonna throw these away. I'm not touching them.
Yeah, well, 22-year-old owning a gym and a storage mart. What are you gonna do? Now to the other side of the hydration piece, but also not just necessarily hydration, but it's, you know, an essential mineral. Villain is that salt is bad for you. Salt and sodium.
Don't put salt on your food.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible for you. Cut salt out if you want to be healthy. Why does this stick?
Well, I think it may not stick for us, but our boomer friends may remember that salt really became a villain in the 70s when we started really getting into the studies and science and diagnostics around heart disease, right? Heart disease became
right after the, what was it?
Cigarettes are bad. Oh shit.
Well, no, I was going to say right after the Keys study where we thought fats were also terrible for us, but then we found out that homeboy omitted like 60% of the results.
Yeah, I think there was like, it was the heart disease, it was the low fat and no salt. And that was like the trifecta that I remember my mom lived by.
Mm-hmm.
And not that she was an over dieter by any means, but like, you know, love our boomer friends, but they love to give advice. And that was always the thing. Don't put salt on that.
Yeah, watch your salt intake.
Low fat everything, including salad dressing, which is disgusting. And yeah. And cigarettes are bad. Like we came up, I feel like we came upon a lot of health advice in the 70s and 80s. And it was like marketing tagline. And salt was one of them. Because you would see it on packaging. I remember it. No salt, low salt.
Yep. Low salt.
No MSG.
Yep. All of that stuff. But a lot of people forget that it's pretty essential, just like water, just like other minerals that keep things moving. So sodium in particular, salt, sodium, maintain fluid balance. And so you go back to the hydration argument with water, like that's pretty critical. They are essential for nerve function. We again said hydration affects nerve function. So does salt, right? And then muscle contractions. It's part of the nerves. Like it's essential for so many things. And it's, you know, everybody's had that friend that chugs water and that has their calves cramp. Like there's a reason. But for active individuals, especially, salt is so critical. And, you know, if you're sweating, you're turning over, hydration quicker, like that just makes it even more important. Now we've talked a little bit about the fun debuts of quote unquote science in the 70s that backed a whole bunch of fat-free, low salt, no MSG, improve your credit score. I don't know everything that it did, but so let's go into the actual science of what salt benefits. Or I would say what salt benefits, or where the fear could actually be placed, where the worry could actually come from.
Yeah, I mean, too much salt obviously can contribute to high blood pressure in some populations. So, but most people don't need to drastically cut that intake unless they have a pre-existing condition like hypertension.
Yeah, or genetics, right? Like if you've got a genetic marker for health, for heart disease, like, yeah, that's something that you should definitely consider. But other than that, you know, salt it's not the villain. I will say that. I don't think it's the villain. What I would say is the real villain when it comes to salt is ultra processed food, because they use that level of salt to make it long shelf life, right? That's how they used to cure meats and all this other stuff. No different today. There's a lot of salt, a lot of sodium poured into things that they want to stay on the shelf or retain a flavor longer. And so if you look at that as opposed to just salt itself, it makes it a little bit simpler as far as where a potential for excess sodium is coming from.
Yep, for sure.
I mean, really, there's not much else to say. It's not the villain. It's not the villain, right? Dose makes the poison. We talked about that a couple of times, but.
Well, dose makes the poison, and like too much sodium reduction or elimination can actually increase your risk of other health issues. So like insulin resistance, dehydration, impaired performance. You just talked about cramping. Like we could swing the other way where we can make it the lack thereof the villain.
Right. And
so
it's it's a balance. It's an equation that you need to be mindful of it, but it doesn't mean that it's bad for you.
No, it's honestly the first thing I prioritize in the day with hydration. So I pair it very nicely.
Yeah, little nugget to anybody listening. What we do in our nutrition challenges, or a lot of times when we start people in nutrition coaching, water, lemon, sea salt. Have that in the morning as a tincture.
Right here, right
there,
now.
In the giant anti-theft self-defense
It's
juggernaut.
a weapon.
Yeah, that thing, gosh,
I just made
fully
fun
loaded.
I just made fun of the hydro jug for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, here's my Stanley.
The reason Jess's forearms are buff, it's because she's got this 48-ounce steel Yeti that she's carrying around. No, but it's a balance. It's 100% understanding, like, there is benefits and negative sides that can come from it, but salt itself is not the villain. Don't avoid necessarily putting salt on your food or using salt as seasoning and stuff like that. And yeah, if you're sweating a lot and you're training a lot and it's summer, electrolyte packets are not a bad thing. Obviously be mindful of it because some of them overload the sodium.
Yeah.
Talking to you, Element. But overall, dose makes the poison with this one, right? There's benefits and risks to over or under. So just try to maintain a healthy relationship with it.
So the next one, I feel like I see more with our millennial Gen Z crowd than I see with the boomers. The boomers like this, but cutting coffee. Coffee is bad for performance or sleep in all cases. If you're serious about your recovery or you're serious about removing all substances from your diet, coffee has to be on the list.
Yeah.
My heart hurts already.
Well, so here I'll do one little caveat here. Coffee, not necessarily caffeine.
Oh yeah,
that's true. You said coffee. I'm gonna switch it to caffeine.
That's smart.
That's what we're talking about here. And caffeine is a stimulant, right? It does upregulate stuff. No doubts about that. But does it remove from your recovery? Does it remove from your performance and stuff like that? It depends. So,
I like the FOMO you just listed there.
It's one of those things. There's benefits and there's takeaways, right? So it's been proven in numerous studies to enhance endurance, reduce perceived effort, boost mental performance, cognitive performance. Like, it is an upticker. You are upregulated with caffeine. Where it has a negative impact, I think has to do a lot more with the timing. It has to do a lot more with people not understanding how your body metabolizes it and breaks it down. So it can have a negative impact on sleep if you consume it too close to bedtime. But again, it's an issue of timing, not necessarily the badness of the caffeine itself. Instead, most studies suggest caffeine cutoff time 6 to 8 hours before sleep for minimal impact. I would even go so far as to say, 1.5 of that before bedtime, because the half-life, right? So if I have a really good cold brew, right? Let's say that's 150 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. If I have a really good cold brew and I have that at noon, we'll call it 200 milligrams. 6 to 8 hours is the half-life, meaning that if I have 200 milligrams at noon and most of the day is pretty, chill, and I'm not going out and sprinting or necessarily hitting a training session, you're going to have 100 milligrams of caffeine in your body at 6 to 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. So if you cut off caffeine and you go to bed at 10 and you cut it off at 3 or 2, you might be cutting that window a little bit close to have it, absolutely affect your sleep. So realistically, what I recommend with most people when it comes to caffeine is knowing the 6 to 8 hour half-life, knowing how you respond dose-wise to caffeine, and setting your body up optimally to actually utilize it on a good cadence, which I'll go over here in a second. Those things are how you can make it work for you. But you can absolutely, I'm not going to say it's healthy to drink a Bang at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jess. I'm never going to say that. Or your Alani's witch's brew and stuff like that. I can't do it.
God, me, it's so personal.
It's because we've talked about it before. This is my shot.
I know. It's my like if I had a weakness, it is the 2 o'clock window where I still have 3-4 meetings left.
I know. And I have my little espresso cup here. I will make little shots of espresso at like 2-3 in the afternoon, try to control the caffeine dosage. But yeah, when it comes to caffeine, there's some good things that caffeine can do. Again,
Yep.
I guarantee I could not handle a workday like Jess's, especially after like 2 or 3 o'clock, knowing I have several meetings and I need to be mentally acute and aware to answer very quick problem solving without a little bit of help.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think what I've learned is what the back half of the day I want to look like after I don't need the caffeine anymore. And then, as you said, leveraging it effectively, wielding it appropriately, and knowing what an effective dose is versus like we don't need a Celsius. we could back that off and just do an espresso. Sources matter.
And I will do a little Easter egg nugget here for anybody who knows this particular individual quote wise. And we don't actually have this in the show notes, but I think it's quite appropriate. Terrence McKenna. One of my favorite quotes by Terrence McKenna is, "You can always take more, but you can never take less." So if you dose caffeine gently, early, and are understanding of the amounts, you can always add a little bit more. But if you drink that Bang, 200 milligrams or something like that, I think Bangs are actually 300 milligrams now that I think about it.
Yeah,
if you drink
I haven't had that in a long time.
You cannot take less. So
once it's done, it's done.
Once it's done, it's done. And it will sit there and you will sit there and shake and wonder why you're having anxiety at 10 o'clock at night. And then all you got to do is think back to that 3 o'clock Alani or Bang or Monster.
I can assure you in today's times, it is not the Alani causing that.
No, that's true. That's very fair. That's for another podcast. But coffee, caffeine is not bad for you. It's all about how you use it. If you're drinking it earlier in the day and using it as a tool for better workouts and focus, keep doing it. But cut caffeine at least 6 to 8 hours before you plan to sleep, or even a little further out, depending on what the activities are to follow. And I'm going to throw something else in there. And I do not think you should wake up and go straight to a caffeine dose. I think when you wake up, you need to set the scene for caffeine to actually benefit you, aka get hydrated, get your stomach going, get your liver going, eat some food, all of those things. Do that in the morning, because everybody wakes up and immediately reaches for a cup of coffee, or they'll have coffee and barely any water before their first meal. And that makes no sense to me. Like, if you want energy, get it from food and a normal routine in the morning. And then the coffee is supplemental. Caffeine is supplemental. So that's what I would say is a big takeaway from me is caffeine has a purpose, but also set yourself up for success so it actually can be utilized in the most beneficial way, instead of it just being a crutch for, waking up in the morning and people are like, I'm tired in the morning. Well, yeah, you just woke up from sleep.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out, because I think too often we associate, or the first thing when we're tired, my energy feels low, is I need caffeine. Like, it's literally like stop one on the diagnostic. And it's like, well, what's your food looking like? How much water have you had? How much sleep did you get last night? Like, look at all the factors and constantly evaluate, is caffeine the next right step? Or could other things take its place that would also give you energy? A walk around the block, especially like if you've been sitting in meetings for a couple hours or you've been sitting any long period of time, a walk is like a dose of caffeine. Think of other things that feel like a dose of caffeine before actually doing a caffeine.
Yeah. Sunlight and a walk? No way.
What do you know?
I mean, it has a purpose, but at the same time, it's a default go-to as opposed to a supplemental help.
Right. More is not more.
Right. Exactly. So those are some good ones. I feel like there are plenty more, and I honestly we already have some stuff going for another episode of this, right? Going into like canned and pouched meats like tuna. Right? We can go into those. We could do that, because people are like, I don't do canned this, and it's just like, really?
I don't do lunch meat. I mean, there's so many There's so many. All you got to do is like open that Women's Daily magazine at the grocery store, and we could come up with like 50 more.
Well, realistically, all we got to do is type in like fitness on TikTok and start scrolling, and it
Oh
would
my
be
God.
awful.
Yep. That's what we're going to do.
But don't let food and fitness villains derail progress. In the end, balance, moderation, consistency, focus on the nutrient-dense foods, whole foods if you can. Stop looking for perfect solutions and quick fixes, aka caffeine, or a complete negation of stuff. Like we've gone over it before. Turning on blinders doesn't work in the long run. It has to feel right for you, but at the same time, talk to somebody about the balance, right? And if don't assume because you are trying something new, like hydrating and eating before caffeine, that it's wrong. Your body adjusts, right? It takes time sometimes, and you'd be surprised at how many of these villainy traps that you can get into, and they're a little difficult to get out of. But once you do, you're set up way better for the long run on your goals, not trying to avoid the boogeymen and the villains.
Yeah. Question things you've always held as like your source of truth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times have we said that we've worked with people who ate the same thing for years or held this almost superstition about something? And then once it was debunked, it unlocked how many doors for them as far as the versatility, the flexibility, new habits, better performance. Like that's what these episodes are all about, in my opinion.
Yeah. Going to a little bit of a root behavior and asking why.
Why do I do this?
Yeah, why are we doing that? Why have I not deviated from this since I was 17 years old?
Yep.
So there's definitely villains in food, but usually it's not the clickbait myths that people are trying to sell you stuff or turn blinders on. The doses make the poison in a lot of cases. Balance it out, find what works for you. And if you have the ability, reach out, whether it's to us or some coaches that you trust. These are things that can help provide perspective. Good soundboard to help you not question it as though it's like you're questioning your identity, but there's definitely some things that we can get used to that don't necessarily serve us the best. So
absolutely
keep an eye out for those things. And as always, stay positively jacked.
Bye.